It's funny, somebody the other day, like I think it was like GQ magazine asked me to do an article and they said, we'd love you to talk about Sparks and nine other equally influential bands. And I thought about it for 15 minutes and I said, I think the point of my documentary is there is nobody else like Sparks. But it took me a
Right.
second, and every band that I thought of were people that already had documentaries about them. So I was thinking,
Uh-huh.
you know what? I'm gonna stick to my original thesis and say there's nobody quite like Sparks.
Do you have any particular advice for up and comers in terms of like how to sort of stick with your vision and not get knocked off? Is there anything that you
What
sort of learned?
I think what was so good about what Edgar did with the documentary is that sort of came out as a really one of the themes of the documentary, just the idea of perseverance and sticking to your vision. And like you said, in any field, whether you're a chef or you're a opera singer, it's kind of just having belief in what you're doing, and that everybody else is wrong in their opinions. I mean, obviously you can accept, you sift through the critiques of yourself, and then just have to decide, well, are they right or are you right in any particular instance? And I think that's what we've just done. And that's the only advice in a certain way you can give to other people, is just, and Edgar really brought that out in the documentary. And so many people that have seen it so far, that's one of the really big takeaways they've gotten. And that it makes us really happy that, because we're so close to ourselves, obviously, and we don't kind of see that, but it took Edgar to do a documentary, and then we watched it and then saw people's reaction. And it's really nice that the film could be inspiring to creative people and even non-creative types, just in like kind of following your own vision.
Yeah. And Edgar, what would you say about that same kind of question, since you're such a singular filmmaker with a singular voice? How did you stay, in your sort of your lane and say, I'm not going to chase these trends or this or that?
I don't know. I mean, I think it's just sometimes it's like Ron says, you don't have a sort of choice, but often it's just like you have to go by your own internal barometer in terms of like what you think is going to work, and kind of I mean, I can only say that in terms of what I've done so far is that there's nothing that I've made that I haven't been proud of, and sometimes like it doesn't catch on straight away, and sometimes it does. But the point is that I'm happy with the movies, and so there's that thing, which maybe it's the same with some of the Sparks albums, that you've got to imagine, like sort of like it's not, like it's never over, the story of a piece of art, and so I think that's the thing. I think the worst thing that can happen is if you kind of sell yourself out or do something that you're not like comfortable with, or that you're not particularly would be your taste, and then it like does badly. That's like the lose-lose. So
Right.
like like the only course of action most of the time is just to kind of like sort of to trust your gut, and do something that you're happy with, and like sort of, and you have to just, whether the culture is there with you or not, it's another thing.
Right.
As long as you've done something that you're happy with, that's the first most important thing.
Because the rest of it is out of your control anyway, right?
To a certain extent, yes, to a
Yeah.
certain extent.
And Ron and Russell, what's it like seeing your faces sort of on movie posters and that sort of stuff? Is it fun? Is it freaky?
It's freaky and fun, both.
I mean, seeing the Sparks Brothers, people have sent us a lot of photos, from the theater marquees in these small towns in the Midwest, and that it's really inspiring to us, places that we haven't had the opportunity to play, and to see that this is kind of the exposure that people will have to Sparks in lieu of us being able to play there. And to know that there are people in those places that are responding. Maybe they weren't Sparks fans, but there is enough interest to have a theater there with the Sparks Brothers on it. You know, it's really moving to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And Edgar, do you now have a sort of a bug? Did you get? Are you an addict now of documentary? Do you want to make more documentaries, or is this a one and doneer?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a good question. It's funny. Somebody the other day, like I think it was like GQ magazine, asked me to do an article, and they said, "We'd love you to talk about Sparks and 9 other equally influential bands." And I thought about it for 50 minutes. I think the point of my documentary is there is nobody else like Sparks. But it took me a second, and every band that I thought of were people that already had documentaries about them. So I was thinking, you know what? I'm going to stick to my original thesis and say there's nobody quite like Sparks.
Yeah, I agree. Like, and everyone seems to be well covered for the most part. Let's see, and I'm pulling some questions from the Q&A that we haven't covered in our chat here, and let me just really quickly segue to that. My apologies. Oh, that's interesting. One question. Everyone wants to ask about the origin, history, evolution of Ron's mustache. I felt like it was covered well, but is there anything that like it didn't come through?
That needs a separate documentary of its own.
I figure.
That's the other one. That's my other documentary.
That's the other one. That's part 2.
Bonus footage. No, I when we first started, everybody in the band was trying to emulate the typical British band, you know, with long hair and satin trousers and snakeskin boots, but it didn't kind of work for me. Just, you know, biological problems in that way. So I tried to adopt kind of a different approach and be kind of more stoic in what I was doing on stage, and I felt that I needed a mustache, and I've always been a fan of silent films, and you know, Oliver Hardy and Chaplin and Keaton, but he wasn't sort of a mustache person in particular.
Right.
So I kind of adopted that, and it, you know, it for better or worse, I mean, it's covered in the documentary. It kind of took on a early 20th century political connotation for a certain country, and so you know, it was something that it attracted attention in kind of all the wrong ways, and so it took me a long time, you know, just because I don't know why, but it didn't sink into me that this was kind of detracting from the music. So from people liking the music, maybe some people. So I kind of went more with a Ronald Coleman after a while, and Ronald Coleman is less controversial than Adolf Hitler, they say. So,
yeah, slightly.
So it, you know, it kind of worked out better that way. But I need a mustache. We tried one. There was one photographer one time that said, "Hey, what would be cool would be if you shaved your mustache and tried to look like Russell." And Russell grew a mustache, and it was a huge mistake in 2 ways. When people saw either of us, it was like, my God. So anyway, I need it, and it's there.
I hear you. One final question before I let you guys go. For all of
Sorry,
you,
that was so long.
No, that's like, you know, as a person with non-traditional facial hair, I'm into all of that. What moment for all of you in the film was sort of your favorite, or was the most moving for you?
I really I watched it the other day actually, because you know, some of our crew hadn't seen it at the cinema, so we threw ourselves a little screening when it came out. I'm in London, and when it came out on you know, Friday night, we had a screening. And the thing that really gets me every time, and it's sadly because he's no longer with us, is Gary Stewart, who's in the documentary, says an amazing thing at the end where he says about about Sparks not being exclusive, and he says this quote where he says, "I don't feel any ownership of them. When people come along 30 or 40 years later, I don't say, 'Hey, I've been here all the time. Where were you?' I say, 'Welcome aboard, and here's more.'" And like, I think that's such a beautiful thing to say about music or any art. And
Mhm,
sadly, because he's no longer with us, it always kind of gets me.
mhm.
No,
And
it was really moving. I mean, if I can, I'll take a non-moving part of the movie
Sure.
since Edgar did. He really, I think that was one of the most striking things in the film. One that was on the lighter side was when I made the flippant comment to Jason Schwartzman once that it was talking about the song of ours, music that you can dance to, and I said, "Oh yeah, that was used in this really cheesy 80s movie called Rad." And he said, and in the documentary, it's classic how Edgar
yeah.
framed it all. But he said, yeah, my mother's in it and she produced it. I'm like, what? Oops.
That was definitely one of my bigger laugh out loud moments was that moment. Because I love Rad and I knew a little bit of the history. I was like, oh, here it comes, here it comes.
Wait, before Ron, most Sparks fans, it's that thing I always like is because everybody always asks, they wonder how comprehensive it is. And you always find that people are trying to like sort of, you know, find something which it doesn't cover. But I did like when he goes, well, as soon as I post the trailer saying, "Do you guys cover Rad at all?" I'm like, "Oh yes, yes we do."
You cover Rad and Roller Coaster, right?
Yes,
Those are
exactly.
well, wonderful, gentlemen. I'll let you go and move on.
No,
with
I
your
spoke over
stuff,
Ron's
but
answer.
yeah.
I'm sorry, Ron.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, I'm so sorry,
Oh,
Ron.
no,
Yeah,
that's
Ron, you go.
I overstayed my welcome with my
No, you did not. No. Yeah,
so
Ron, I want to hear from you. Absolutely.
Oh, well, I mean, I would just say that just the people that Edgar brought, it's not one moment, but just the people that Edgar brought into the film were people that we, in general, that we didn't know and hadn't met, but obviously respected just because of their reputation in different sorts of arts. And you try not to be influenced by the fact that other people who you really admire are admiring what you're doing, but it's kind of human nature. And so to see these people assembled in a documentary, it was really inspiring.